Do you think there is that culture of fear, Jason, as someone who worked at Miramax?
Of course, I think there's that culture of fear.
When nobody wants to stand up and the silence is deafening. And I think that's the part that we're responsible for.
I was raped in '97 to speak out against this man, against one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, who sat at the very top of the pyramid and wielded enormous power and influence, would almost certainly mean the end of any career I had in the film industry. My hands were tied, my mouth was gagged, I was silenced against my will, and I wasn't the only one. Dozens of women sexually assaulted by the same men kept their silence, some for decades, because we had no other choice.
And so then we all hear these rumors.
You know, he's old school.
It's, oh, he does this, he does that, but we didn't see it.
Some of us signed comprehensive confidentiality agreements with our abuser that held out the threat of total financial ruin if we ever spoke out.
You know, it's a difficult question because very difficult for people to, there's a culture of paying off people.
This was his insurance policy, a gun to our heads, a law designed to protect the rapist.
Because a lot of people say, well, why didn't you fight him off? Why didn't you run?
To go where? To stand in the street? Then where would you go? What would you do? I had no profession. I had no money. It's embarrassing that you're so afraid. It's embarrassing that you don't have nerve enough to leave. People don't understand.
A lot of people are also stupid.
Mitzi, how about this expression? Does it fit you that you wanted to play the game, but you didn't want to wear the uniform?
So don't ask me those questions. That would be my response.
Okay, maybe I wanted to wear the uniform, but I didn't want to play the game. I don't know how to play games.
I'm tired of that language. I'm tired of having to answer basic, mundane questions.
Did he fully rape you?
It's not my fault you're stupid. It's not my fault you can't think bigger.
He threw me down, he pinned me to the ground, and like I said, I was screaming, and he said, shut up, and I said, no.
It's not my fault you can't put yourself in the shoes of someone who's been terrorized repeatedly.
Because everybody, when they talk to me about this, say this must be very distressing for you.
Were there times during the 20 years where you thought, I'm going to break my silence?
And the one thing it isn't is distressing. The last 20 years have been distressing, where I've not been allowed to speak, where I've not been validated. And being able to now see that I wasn't mad, that, this was wrong. What I couldn't deal with, what I had no equipment for, was to deal with the legal system.
Were there times during the 20 years where you thought, I'm going to break my silence, I'm going to come forward?
Nope.
Why?
Essentially I'd gone to the parents to say, somebody's done something bad, and there was no recourse.
Nope.
And that was really shocking and very frightening to discover that
the language and media,
the law couldn't help me.
It was not anywhere close to where it needed to be.
When I did eventually decide to speak out, every day on TV there was another discussion panel made up of people who did not know me and whom I had never met, dedicated to arguing about whether I had been raped or not, dissecting my story, my life, as if they were detectives at a crime scene that existed only in their morbid imagination. The story about me and my abuser was just a confirmation they needed to prove thought I was a whore. They shamed me in front of the whole country, on every channel, during prime time. And the conclusion they came to, these great detectives, was that not only was I asking for it, that I wanted it. In their eyes, I was not even worthy of being a victim of this monster. In their eyes, I was not even good enough to be raped.
It was the entire system, and the system essentially protected that. Because if you have the power and the money to create agreements that cover up essentially a very serious, in this case...
This is an international rape factory.
I dread to imagine, what other things are being covered up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question.
How adorable they are. Each time I see a little girl of 5 or 6 or 7, I can't resist a joyous urge to smile and say, thank heaven.
I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations.
Thank heaven for little girls.
In which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade.
4 little girls get bigger every day.
The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business.
And I knew they were going to trot the activists out there for PR.
Thank heaven for little girls. They grow up in the most delightful way.
But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children.
Those little eyes so helpless and appealing.
And what was Mia's reaction when she found out about Suni?
What happened was crazy behavior that became, terrible rage.
Thank heaven for little girls.
Death threat.
Thank heaven for them all, no matter where, no matter who. Without them, what would little boys do?
She accused me of child molestation.
Thank heaven for little girls.
And so, if you're sexually inappropriate with somebody and they think, oh, if I speak up, am I suddenly a pain in the ass to everyone else in show business and I'll never work again? And then suddenly that we're writing checks to women. It's like, here's 150 grand and I won't mention it to anybody.
My reputation was pretty suspect. I really couldn't stay in the industry at that point.
It's like a priest who seems like a great part of the community, so nobody doubts
that type of behavior.
Gives his money to all these colleges, and then on the side you give money to charity, and you kind of create. They set up a power dynamic that and presents himself as someone we can look up to hide their dark side. There's a culture of paying off people.
Do you regret having signed the settlement?
No, it's not a factor. I didn't take money for what happened to me. I took money because it's my only way of saying, literally my only way of saying, I did not like this. I did not want this. This was not consensual. Get off me.
Through the camaraderie and understanding, empathy and love of my fellow survivors, we all stood together, who took my side and stood up for me against the bullies, and became stronger for it. And out of this ordeal, I was transformed. I was given a role I had never once considered for myself, but one I felt I had no choice but to take, that of an activist.
How about just call me Angel of the Morning?
Down on the casting couch, a star is gonna be born, a star with the stature of a Harlow.
I don't know how to play games.
I did not like this. I did not want this.
It's embarrassing that you don't have nerve enough to leave.
Stars, oh, let there be lights, action, sound.
I was raped in '97.
Did he fully rape you?
She accused me of child molestation.
What I couldn't deal with, what I had no equipment for, was to deal with the legal system.
Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls?
There's a culture of paying off people. It's like a priest.